Hello, my name is Matthew Guilford, and I am the bass trombonist with the National Symphony Orchestra in Washington, D.C., where I have performed for the past 32 seasons. I am also a senior lecturer at the University of Maryland School of Music, where I have taught since 1994. I began playing Edwards instruments, trombones, in 1993 following their visit to what is now called the American Trombone Workshop. At that time, it was called Eastern Trombone Workshop. And they were kind enough to lend the National Symphony Orchestra trombone section their entire stock from the show. So that gave us opportunity to try all the bells and slides and combinations. I ended up buying my first bass trombone from them. It was a single valve bass. Although this is not the original instrument that I bought from Edwards, I did purchase this just over a year ago. And so any National Symphony recording that you would hear from the early 1990s, Shostakovich symphonies with Mstislav Rostropovich conducting, you'll hear me playing on a single valve bass trombone from Edwards. So even though I am a bass trombone player, the secret that we don't tell a lot of people is that you use a second valve maybe 10% of the time. So a lot of my work is done with single valve. And quite frankly, a single valve bass trombone gives you more transparency of sound, whereas a double valve bass trombone gives you more density of sound. And there's a time and a place for both of those things. With this instrument, I'm probably going to play a lot of repertoire that is from Mozart or Haydn forward into the early Romantic era. So this next selection I'll be playing is from Franz Joseph Haydn's The Creation Oratorio, selection number 26. The second bass trombone that I purchased from Edwards Instruments is this instrument that I'm holding right now. And originally I did not conceive it as an orchestral instrument. I conceived it for chamber music and for solo playing. So why is that? You'll see this is a dependent setup. It's a 10-inch rose brass bell, 23 gauge. So it's quite thick. I bought it for its warmth of sound and for the density of sound that it can provide if I'm playing on the bottom of a brass quintet. When Leonard Slatkin became our music director in the mid-1990s, he favored a much darker sound from the orchestra. I experimented by using this in our concert hall, and it was actually a very good fit, and any of those recordings with Leonard Slatkin from 1995 through the early 2000s would have been on this instrument. So the dependent setup for bass trombone has the second valve, this one tuned in G-flat as an offset. I think it has an advantage in that the gooseneck pipe here is unimpeded. So when you're playing most of your notes, either open horn or single valve, you've got only one pass through here. So there's less diversion of air constantly through the instrument, but gives you a little bit more openness of sound in general. Are these levels pretty much set for whatever? Because I'm going to bring some heat here. This next selection is from Aaron Copland's Symphony Number 3, which we performed many, many times with Leonard Slatkin, and actually recorded as well, and played on tour. So this is a tutti trombone section from the second movement. So this instrument I'm holding now is my daily driver with the National Symphony Orchestra and has been for probably the past 15 years. The setup that you see here is a very standard configuration for valve tuning. We've got F and G flat, together D. The slide is a single bore, and the mouthpiece that I'm using is a Griego 0.5, the Deco model. I also use the New York model, also the same exact size, 0.5, for pops and other commercial work that needs a little bit more lightness and pop to the sound. With an independent valve setup on bass trombone, you have many, many possibilities of valve configurations. As you're choosing an instrument, what I like to play are some very simple excerpts for tenor and for bass trombone that utilize the valve so that you can put a steady airstream through the horn and see how it responds to what you're doing naturally. So the next two excerpts I'll play are Saint-Saens Symphony No. 3, the organ symphony, which is actually a trombone 1 solo, and followed up by a very similar excerpt for bass trombone, the Schumann Symphony No. 3 Rhenish. They both play in the same register and a lot of opportunity for using valve. So although the trombone solo in Saint-Saens' Third Symphony, the organ symphony, is for principal trombone, it so closely resembles the excerpt in Schumann's Symphony No. 3 for the bass trombone excerpt that I frequently use the two to play off against each other. And it's really more of a practice for me in the practice room because they so closely resemble each other, and you don't get stuck in a rut of only playing one excerpt. And it also gives you a little bit more flexibility. Next work I'd like to play is a saraband, and not the typical saraband that you'll find a lot of trombone players playing from Bach's Cello Suite No. 5. This is actually written for a wind instrument, and so this is from the Flute Partita in A minor by Johann Sebastian Bach. Obviously, it's not in the range for a flute. It's probably 2 octaves lower, maybe 3, but it's a good opportunity for me to display valve usage because this goes down to C1, below the bass clef staff. I play on Griego mouthpieces exclusively for tenor and bass trombone. And why I do that is because I feel they're the most natural fit for Edwards instruments, trombones. I've tried several others and with varying degrees of success, but these always work for me, both on the job, with the symphony orchestra, and in chamber music playing, and commercial playing. For bass trombone, I use one size only with two different blanks. So this is the Griego .5. The Deco model, again, is my daily driver with the symphony orchestra. And I will go to the New York model when we're doing more commercial work, if we're going to play something like Bernstein's Symphonic Dances from West Side Story that has more range and you need a little bit more sizzle in the sound, that this would be my choice. There are many mouthpiece choices to be made out there, and I came to the Griego mouthpieces in probably the mid to early 2000s when I purchased this instrument. It would seem a very natural fit. And although I tried some other mouthpieces that were on the market, I always kept coming back to this one, which is the Griego .5. And again, I play on one size mouthpiece, so the rim size is no different. I just play on two different blanks, the New York model for more commercial repertoire, and the Deco model for standard symphonic repertoire. The repertoire for trombone orchestrally from the early Romantic period, so we're talking about Weber, Schumann, Schubert, doesn't really require much bass trombone usage with two valves. In fact, none. So that's why you'll find me using this instrument. This is my tenor. My title with the National Symphony Orchestra in my contract actually states trombone 3/bass trombone. So what does trombone 3 mean? It could mean many things. And if you see orchestral material in the scores, there are 3 trombones listed. It doesn't necessarily mean that the bottom trombone is a bass trombone. With our configuration in the National Symphony Orchestra, if we're doing Haydn or Mozart or anything late classical to early Romantic, chances are very good they were played on an instrument of roughly this size, which is a large bore tenor instrument. So in my orchestra, when the principal trombone player is playing alto trombone, our second player will typically play a small bore tenor instrument, and I'll pick up my Edwards large bore tenor. We've all scaled down in size, which makes it appropriate for that kind of literature, for that style. When I'm performing with the National Symphony Orchestra, I'm a specialist on bass trombone. But when I'm teaching at the University of Maryland, I'm very much a generalist, where I am playing and teaching on alto trombone, tenor trombone, bass trombone, contrabass trombone, occasionally euphonium. So that flexibility that's required is made much easier when you have a very good quality instrument in your hands, such as this tenor. So I'm going to play a tenor excerpt, which is not my usual thing, but if I'm going to be teaching it to young students, I should probably know what I'm talking about. So my Edwards tenor trombone has a sound pillar, which is located right here above the F trigger. I've experimented with using, there were 3 that come in with the instrument of varying metals and varying shapes and sizes. I've gravitated toward this one, which is a raw brass. It made a subtle change in both the response and the density of sound in the instrument. As a bass trombone player coming to a tenor trombone, I'll tend to overload it with a little bit too much air, and this seemed to kind of regulate the response from the instrument. Without it, I'm a brighter player, I would say, slightly brighter, and with it, it just kind of makes everything a little bit happier from my perspective. So in total, I have 4 Edwards trombones instruments, 3 basses and 1 tenor. I spent the better part of a day in Elkhorn, Wisconsin, at their shop, selecting my daily driver bass trombone, the independent setup, and tried many configurations of bells, slides, tuning slides, lead pipes. All the material that I selected is stock material that anyone can buy. So my name does not appear on any of these instruments, but anyone can play what I'm playing. And that's what I love about the modular concept of their instruments, that you can select from a myriad of things and come around to the sound and style that's going to express what you want to say with the trombone. If you are in search of an Edwards trombone and are looking for that factory-fitting experience, please come to Virtuosity Music Instruments in Boston. Do something to piss off other tenor trombone players.
Yes! Yes! Oh, I love that answer.
Yeah, that's the right answer.
If you're okay with that, it's probably going to go in the bloopers too.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
How should I say this? Okay, this will probably make more sense. My contracted position with the National Symphony Orchestra. My contracted position with the National Symphony Orchestra. Come on, Matthew, you can say orchestra. Yeah, that's probably good enough.
You can sound like that,
Yeah, exactly.
No, they're gonna turn off the video right when you start. They're gonna be like, no, I can't. Yeah, they're like, no, that's. I was thinking Bolero and he's in third. I'm like, oh, we're going somewhere cool. That was exciting.
You gotta walk the walk, right?
Wow, that was definitely a serious walk. I mean, you could just do like the first for Hungarian or something, call it a day. But you're like, no, we're doing exposed.
Well, I'm a bass trombone player that likes to play high. So what does that say? It's weird, but it's yeah.
Confident with that one.
Yeah, I'm not always confident holding this.
Well, neither are we, I think.
Please come to